We have on the line now our good friend KT McFarland, national security analyst for the Fox News Channel, good friend of this program. Good morning to you, KT.
Good morning.
Listen, I want to start out with Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday at the United Nations. He's making the case that he doesn't really trust all this moderate talk that's coming out of Iran right now. And here's one of the lines he delivered during his speech.
You see, Rouhani thinks he can have his yellow cake and eat it too.
Yeah, and he says, listen, the Rouhani is a wolf's and sheep's clothing. And then the Iranian foreign minister, well, he makes the case, KT, oh, no, we're not interested in nuclear weapons.
We're not seeking nuclear weapons, so we're not 6 months, 6 years, 60 years away from nuclear weapons. We do not want nuclear weapons. We believe nuclear weapons are detrimental to our security.
All right, so what do you think about all that, KT?
A couple of things. Iran's getting nuclear weapons. It's just a matter of when they're getting nuclear weapons and when at what point do they stop. I mean, I think the deal that will be presented to us will be that Iran stops short of a nuclear weapon, and pick your time frame of what short means, 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, and we lift the sanctions. And so they really pretend that they don't have nuclear weapons. We pretend to believe them. But the entire region and the entire world knows that they are within, a couple of turns of the screwdriver away from being a nuclear power. I think the next question then is what happens then? What happens to the Middle East? I was just in the region this last week, and it was pretty clear from the people there that if Iran is perceived to have nuclear weapons, in other words, a couple of turns of the screwdriver away, the other countries in the region will feel they need to too.
And so the great concern. So when you hear Benjamin Netanyahu saying, look, don't be fooled by all this moderate rhetoric you're hearing from the new president of Iran, he's well justified in saying that, in your opinion.
Yeah, because the question will be not does Iran have a nuclear weapon sitting on the shelf that they can use in 6 minutes. It'll be, do they have all the ingredients on the shelf to create a nuclear weapon in 2 or 3 weeks' time? And that's really a distinction without a very big difference.
Right. KT McFarland, the president called the president of Iran. It obviously got a lot of attention, the fact that he made this phone call. And not every world leader gets a phone call from the president of the United States, let alone a leader of a nation who has really just declared war on us in every possible way, call us the great Satan, said that they will crush us and insulted us. And, in fact, we haven't talked to the leader of that nation since they took hundreds of our people hostage back in the late 70s. What did this guy, this new president of Iran, do to deserve the honor of a phone call from President Obama?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, it's new wine. Old wine in new bottles. He's just got a much more. I was at a meeting that he had with this, elite members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Asia Society in New York last week. He's a smooth customer, and he sounds really reasonable. But he has no difference in policy of his predecessor. What's different is President Obama's desperate for a deal. And President Obama wants to, like every president, certainly the ones I've worked for, and every other president, they get in trouble at home, particularly in their last 2 years of an administration when nothing seems to be going right. So they look abroad for some kind of a deal to do to make themselves look relevant again, because they're kind of lame ducks at home. And so they go abroad. And what Obama wants to present within the year is a deal on chemical weapons with Syria, where really Russia's calling the shots, and the real effect of that deal is maybe Syria gives away some of its chemical weapons, maybe all of its chemical weapons, but we're no longer in charge in the Middle East. The second deal will be with Iran, where they pretend to get nuclear weapons. They pretend not to get nuclear weapons, and we pretend to believe them. But the final result of all of that is we're out of the Middle East. We're no longer a player in a region of the world which is critical to the world's economy.
KT McFarland's our guest. She's the Fox News national security analyst. And, of course, we know uniformed military personnel are going to continue getting paid during the government shutdown. But there are a lot of other people in the Department of Defense and in intelligence who are going to be furloughed if they can't get their act together on Capitol Hill and in the White House, for that matter. Any concerns, KT, about national security during the government shutdown?
Well, it's not just that. It's just that we look like bozos.
Yeah.
I was just in Egypt, where supposedly there was a military coup, and democracy was, removed from power, and now that they're in some kind of a government that isn't democratic. Well, that's in fact not the case. The government of Egypt, thank goodness the government of Egypt has changed, because the democratically elected leader was very rapidly dismantling all the structures of democracy. So I go from one country, then I come back to the United States, which is supposedly a democracy where everybody works together to figure out the common good. And I kind of had to scratch my head saying, what's going on here? We've got, Shutdown in Washington, and both parties seem to be ignoring the need for the American people to get on with things. I mean, when my kids would fight, it's seemingly to the bitter end. I would lock them in a room and say, come out when we either have to go to the emergency room because somebody's bleeding out or you've solved the problem.
Yeah, lock them in, make them straighten it out.
All right, but no concerns national security wise, other than not being able to see the Air Force Navy football game this weekend.
Hey, look, and that's not about the money. I was planning to go to that football game. I'm a proud Navy supporter.
There you go.
And I've heard from people on the inside that there's the money, the sports programs of the service academies are largely paid for by independent donations and television sponsorship.
Yeah.
And so this is not about the money. This is just about an administration that wants to be petty, mean, and vindictive.
Why doesn't anyone at the Academy push back? That's ridiculous. I mean, just because he's the commander-in-chief?
Well,
He's the commander-in-chief. You don't ever criticize
and so he's using that for
boss.
political purpose. Oh, KT, great to have you as always.